The billionaire's mansion shook with a scream so raw it didn't sound human. It was the sound of a father discovering his son was gone. Not missing. Taken. And the only clue left behind was a blood-stained bracelet the boy never took off, lying in the maid's trembling hands. Outside, police lights flashed like violent lightning across the marble driveway, and the billionaire, Daniel Hawthorne, stood frozen, unable to breathe. His fiancée, Victoria, clutched his arm, pretending to comfort him, while her eyes glimmered with a strange satisfaction she thought no one would notice. But someone did. The maid. Elena. The only person who loved the boy like her own. And when the truth slashed through her, who really paid for the kidnapping, her knees buckled. Because if she didn't act now, the boy wouldn't just disappear. He would die. And the real monster was standing right inside the house. Before we dive into this story, I want to ask you one thing. Studio microphone, which city are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. I love seeing where my viewers across the USA are tuning in from. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Because today's story is going to break you in ways you won't expect. Billionaire Daniel Hawthorne wasn't the kind of man born into wealth. He fought his way up from a tiny apartment above a mechanic shop, built his empire with sleepless nights, and raised his only son, 8-year-old Liam, with a tenderness that shocked anyone who only knew Daniel as the ruthless business tycoon. To the world, he looked unstoppable. But every strong man has one blind spot. And for Daniel, it was his fiancée, the picture-perfect, camera-ready, society darling Victoria Van Allen. Everyone adored her. Everyone trusted her. Except one person. Elena. The maid who had been in Daniel's home long before Victoria ever walked in wearing her diamond heels. Elena knew the truth behind Victoria's flawless smile, the resentment in her eyes whenever Daniel cancelled a date because Liam needed him, the irritation when the boy laughed louder than she liked, the jealousy whenever Daniel held his son a little tighter. Victoria didn't love Daniel. She wanted his fortune. And she despised Liam for standing in the way. But Elena never imagined the jealousy would twist into something darker, a plan to have the child kidnapped, a staged break-in, a scheme designed so Daniel would never suspect the woman sleeping beside him. But evil always leaves a clue. And on the night Liam vanished, Elena found one. And that's where our story truly begins. Daniel Hawthorne had always believed that the safest place on earth for his son, Liam, was their mansion, a fortress of iron gates, armed security, 24 cameras, and alarm systems so advanced they looked like they belonged in a government building rather than a billionaire's home. But on the night everything shattered, all that protection meant nothing. It started like any other evening. Liam had fallen asleep on the couch in the family room, cradled under a soft gray blanket Elena always tucked around him when Daniel got home late. The house was dim, quiet, peaceful, the kind of quiet that feels safe. Until it didn't. Elena walked down the hallway toward the kitchen when she heard it, the unmistakable sound of glass cracking under pressure. A window. Not shattered, but slipped open just enough for a draft to whistle through. Her first instinct was confusion. Had she forgotten to lock it? But Elena was meticulous. She didn't forget things. Especially when it came to Liam. She moved slowly toward the sound, her heart beating faster with every step, her instincts tightening around her like a warning. When she reached the living room, she froze. The blanket was on the floor. The couch was empty. Liam, gone. No footsteps. No cries. Just a knife-sharp silence that sliced through her chest. And then she saw it, a shadow moving near the dining room archway. Tall. Covered. Hooded. Not a member of the staff. Not security. Someone else. Someone inside the house. Liam. Elena's voice cracked as she lunged forward. The shadow jerked, startled, then bolted toward the back door. Elena chased it, her feet slipping on the polished floors as adrenaline drowned out every logical thought. She didn't see a face, but she saw the boy, wrapped in a black cloth, being dragged like luggage toward the yard. Liam's tiny hand reached out, shaking, terrified, trying to grab anything, a doorframe, a chair, the rug, but the kidnapper was stronger. Faster. Violent. Elena screamed again, louder this time, the kind of scream that pulled sound from the deepest part of the soul. Upstairs, Daniel heard her, not just the scream, but the terror in it. He ran down the stairs, stumbling as panic kicked through every muscle in his body. But by the time he reached the foyer, the back door was wide open, the cold night wind blasting in as if the house itself were gasping. The kidnapper shoved Liam into a black van parked at the edge of the driveway. Tires screeched. The engine roared. The van sped into the night with no headlights, disappearing into the pitch-black street. Daniel sprinted barefoot across the concrete, chasing a vehicle he knew he couldn't outrun. "Bring my son back," he shouted into the night, his voice cracking with a terror he'd never known. Elena collapsed on the driveway, her hands shaking uncontrollably as she reached for the one thing left behind, Liam's bracelet. The tiny blue charm she had bought on his last birthday. It was smeared with dirt and blood. She held it like it was a piece of the boy's heart torn out. Daniel grabbed her shoulders, desperate. "Elena, what happened? Where is he?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Only sobs. Only the image burned into her eyes, Liam's terrified face, his lips trembling as the kidnapper pulled him away. Daniel called 911 with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Within minutes, police cars flooded the driveway, red and blue lights flashing like a nightmare carnival against the mansion's white stone. Officers ran through the house, sweeping every room, checking every lock, every window, every exit. And that's when one strange detail hit Elena like a punch: the window wasn't broken. It wasn't forced open. It was unlocked from the inside. Someone in the house had done it. And that's when she felt eyes on her. Victoria. Standing in the doorway wearing a silk robe, her expression twisted into something almost annoyed. Not scared. Not shocked. Annoyed. "What's going on?" she asked in a tone too calm for the situation, her gaze flicking to Daniel as if he were overreacting. Daniel spun toward her, his face ghost white. Liam was taken. Someone broke in and took him. Victoria blinked slowly, once, twice, like she needed time to manufacture the right reaction. Then she gasped dramatically, covering her mouth with her manicured hand. "Oh my God, how? How did that even happen? Isn't the staff always around?" Elena felt the sting immediately. Victoria wasn't questioning the break-in, she was directing suspicion. At her. Elena shook her head, tears streaming. "He was right here. I saw the man take him. I tried to stop, but you didn't," Victoria said softly, almost sweetly. Too sweetly. Daniel snapped, "Victoria, stop." But Elena wasn't looking at Victoria anymore. She was looking at the corner of the foyer, right where Victoria had been earlier that evening, before the kidnapping. A tiny shred of fabric lay on the floor. Red silk. The exact color of Victoria's robe. Elena picked it up with trembling fingers. Victoria froze for a split second. It was tiny, barely noticeable, but enough. Enough for Elena to feel something cold twist inside her. A thread. A window unlocked from the inside. A reaction that didn't fit the moment. A plan too clean, too precise, too convenient. Elena didn't have proof. Not yet. But she had a feeling, a terrible, gut-deep certainty, that the monster wasn't the stranger in the hood. The real monster was standing right in front of them. And she wasn't done. Not even close. The mansion that once felt like a palace now pulsed with panic, sirens echoing off the marble walls as officers swarmed through every hallway, every room, every hidden corner. Daniel stood in the center of the chaos like a man whose soul had been ripped out. His hands were shaking, his eyes bloodshot, his clothes twisted from running outside barefoot. But nothing could quiet the noise inside his head, the sound of Liam crying for help. The replay haunted him like a nightmare he couldn't wake from. "We'll find him, sir," an officer promised, but even his steady voice wavered under the weight of Daniel's grief. Meanwhile, Elena sat on the couch clutching the blood-stained bracelet so tightly it nearly cut into her palm. Every time she blinked, she saw Liam's terrified face, his arms reaching, his little fingers trembling. Beside her, a detective knelt, asking gentle but precise questions, yet all she could hear was her heartbeat slamming inside her ears. "The window wasn't broken," the detective said quietly. "Someone opened it from inside." "Are you sure nobody else was with Liam before he fell asleep?" Elena hesitated, her eyes sliding toward Victoria involuntarily. The detective noticed. Victoria did too. And that was when Victoria struck. "Detective," she said with artificial concern dripping from her voice, "I hate to say this, but Elena has been overwhelmed lately. She's been forgetting things, misplacing things. Daniel and I discussed letting her take some time off." Elena's head snapped up, stunned. This was a lie, a calculated, cold-blooded lie. Victoria continued, placing a sympathetic hand on her chest like a trained actress, "I'm just saying, maybe she left the window open without realizing. Maybe it was an accident." Daniel glared at her, his voice sharp. "Victoria, enough." But the detective had to entertain every possibility, even one spoken by liars. "Elena," he asked gently, "did you open the window at any point today?" "No," she said firmly, her voice cracking but certain. "Never. I checked every lock before bedtime. I always do." Victoria gave a small, condescending smile. "Sweetheart, are you sure?" "It's okay if you forgot, I didn't forget." Elena exploded, standing so fast the bracelet fell from her hand. It hit the floor with a soft metallic clink, but the sound sliced louder than a scream. Every officer in the room turned. Victoria leaned back, pretending to be startled, even frightened, but her eyes betrayed her, emotionless, calculating, studying every reaction, every crack she could deepen. Daniel stepped between them, protective, frustrated. "Victoria, stop attacking her. Liam loves Elena more than anyone. If she says she didn't open that window, she didn't." But Victoria had already planted the seed of doubt. Officers exchanged glances. It didn't help that Elena was shaking, emotional, almost hysterical, the perfect picture of someone who could seem unstable to outsiders. And Victoria knew it. The detective stood and walked toward Daniel. "Sir, we reviewed the footage from the hallway cameras. The one facing the living room was disabled 10 minutes before the kidnapping." Daniel's stomach dropped. Disabled? By who? Someone inside. There were no signs of forced entry on the DVR system. Elena felt cold. She remembered walking past the security panel earlier that evening, and seeing Victoria standing there, tapping something on her phone while pretending to adjust a picture frame. At the time, Elena hadn't thought anything of it. Now her breath caught. "Detective," Elena whispered, "Victoria was by the panel before dinner. She touched it." Victoria gasped theatrically, as if stabbed. "Are you kidding me? You're accusing me now?" Daniel turned toward Elena, not doubting her, but overwhelmed. "Elena, are you sure?" "Yes," she whispered. "I saw her." Victoria scoffed, crossing her arms. "Daniel, you know your maid is under stress. She's confused. You can't seriously believe I would disable cameras to help someone kidnap your son." But her voice trembled ever so slightly, a crack only Elena noticed. The detective didn't argue. He simply said, "We'll dust the panel for fingerprints." And for the first time, a flicker of real fear crossed Victoria's face. She recovered quickly, but the moment was there. Gone in a second, but enough to confirm Elena's gut instinct: Victoria was hiding something. Still, Victoria wasn't done. "Detective," she said calmly, "I want the staff questioned. Every single person. Especially Elena. She was the last one with Liam." The detective nodded. Procedure required it. And so the interrogation began. One by one, staff members were questioned in a separate room. Elena waited her turn, sitting alone at the edge of the couch while Victoria watched her like a hawk pretending to be a dove. When Elena was finally called in, Victoria stood behind her, placing a too gentle hand on her shoulder. "Good luck," she whispered. "You'll need it." Elena pulled away, disgusted. Inside the small study, the detective closed the door and sat across from her. "Elena, I need you to tell me everything. Start from the moment you last saw Liam alive." The words, "alive," made her chest ache. She inhaled and told him everything: the blanket, the noise, the shadow, the chase, the van, the fabric thread on the floor, the unlocked window. "And you're positive the window wasn't open before the incident?" the detective asked again. "Positive," she said. "Please believe me. Someone wanted to make it look like an inside job. That's why the window was unlocked." "But who would want that?" Elena hesitated again, the image of Victoria's cold smile threatening to spill from her lips. But without proof, she would only look desperate. I don't know," she said finally. "But someone inside did this. Someone who wants us to think it was me." The detective scribbled notes. "Elena, do you have any enemies here? Anyone who dislikes your role in the household?" Elena thought of Victoria's jealous glares, her bitter comments when Daniel chose Liam over her, the resentment boiling under her perfect smile. But she bit her tongue. "Not really," she whispered. When the interrogation ended, Elena stepped out to find Daniel pacing violently in the foyer. He grabbed her hands immediately. "Elena. I swear, we will bring him back. I don't care what it costs." For the first time, she saw him truly breaking, the powerful billionaire reduced to a father desperate for the only person who gave his life meaning. Behind them, Victoria leaned on the doorway, pretending to wipe tears. But Elena saw it, the slightest twist of her lips, the faintest smirk when the detective approached her for questioning. Victoria thought she had outsmarted everyone. But she didn't know Elena. And Elena wasn't done fighting. Not even close. News travels fast in wealthy neighborhoods, faster than logic, faster than truth, and by sunrise, the entire community knew the Hawthorne heir had been kidnapped right out of his home. Camera crews began lining up outside the gates like vultures smelling tragedy, their microphones pointed at the driveway where hours earlier police lights had painted the night red. Daniel hated every second of it. His pain wasn't a spectacle, but the world treated it like breaking news. "Mr. Hawthorne. Does this have anything to do with your business rivals? Was your security system hacked? Is it true your maid was the last one with the child?" That last question made Elena flinch. She stood behind Daniel in the doorway, clutching a mug she wasn't even drinking from, trying to stay invisible. But visibility became impossible the moment a loud, angry voice cut through the reporters. "Why was a child taken in our neighborhood?" A neighbor, Mrs. Caldwell, marched toward the press, red-faced, emotional. "My kids play with Liam," she shouted. "How can a child be kidnapped from a billionaire's home? What chance do the rest of us have?" Her anger wasn't directed at Daniel or Elena. It was directed at the idea that someone had violated the one place every parent clings to: safety. Soon more neighbors joined, murmuring, panicking, shaking their heads. One teenage boy stepped forward, Liam's friend, Noah. He clutched his phone nervously. I think I saw something last night," he said, eyes flicking to Daniel. Daniel's heart skipped. What did you see, son? Noah swallowed. A black van was driving slowly around the neighborhood. No lights. I thought it was someone lost, but, his voice cracked. I should have told someone. Daniel stepped forward, placing a firm, grateful hand on Noah's shoulder. You did nothing wrong. Thank you. But Victoria saw opportunity. Detective, she said sweetly, ask him if he saw anyone near the house. Anyone, suspicious. She glanced briefly at Elena. It was subtle. Viciously subtle. Elena felt heat rush to her cheeks. Stop it, she whispered to herself, her fists clenching. The detective addressed Noah. Did you see anyone on foot? Noah frowned, thinking deeply. Actually, yes. I saw a woman earlier. Near the gate. I only saw her silhouette. She was short, maybe around Elena's height. Victoria gasped dramatically. Oh no, Elena's heart punched her ribs. No, she blurted. I wasn't near the gate at all. I was inside with Liam, you know that, Daniel. Daniel raised a hand gently to calm her, but the damage was done. Neighbors whispered amongst themselves. Some looked at Elena with pity. Others with suspicion. Victoria folded her arms like she had expected this all along. The detective pressed gently, Noah, are you certain it could have been her? Noah shook his head. I'm not sure. It was dark. The figure was blurry. But the seed had been planted, again. The media twisted it instantly. Maid may have been last person seen near gate, witness claims. Daniel cursed under his breath, furious at the lies spreading like fire. Elena's chest tightened until breathing felt impossible. But something happened next that changed everything. An older man walked through the crowd, leaning heavily on a cane. Mr. Thompson, the ex-cop who lived 2 houses down. His eyes were sharp, his stance steady despite age. That van, he said loudly, drawing every eye. I saw it too. And I saw the driver. Daniel moved toward him quickly. Sir, what did you see? Thompson took a long breath. The driver was wearing a mask, but he wasn't alone. There was a second person in the passenger seat. The detective leaned forward. Second person, male or female? Thompson hesitated. His gaze slid directly toward Victoria, slowly, deliberately, as if he had been thinking about this all morning. Definitely female, he said. Long hair. Metallic earrings. Something shiny when the headlights from another car reflected. Victoria stiffened. Her hand shot instantly to her ear. Her diamond earrings, the same ones she wore last night, glimmered in the sunlight. Elena's lungs froze. She wasn't the only one who noticed. Daniel saw it too. In fact, everyone did. A murmur rippled through the neighborhood. Victoria quickly forced a laugh. Are you serious? Tons of women wear earrings, not the kind that sparkle like that, Mr. Thompson said bluntly. Not at that hour. And not sitting in a black van circling a billionaire's home. Reporters erupted with questions, but Victoria snapped, this is ridiculous. I was home all night. Elena stepped forward, finally gaining the courage she'd been suffocating. Really? She challenged, her voice trembling but fierce. Because when the kidnapping happened, you weren't in the bedroom. You weren't anywhere. You showed up minutes later pretending to be confused. Victoria's jaw clenched. Are you accusing me? I'm stating facts, Elena said, feeling something inside her ignite, a protective fire she didn't know she had. The detective intervened. Ms. Van Allen, we will need a full timeline of your movements last night. Victoria scoffed, hiding panic behind indignation. Ask Daniel. He knows where I was. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, his eyes didn't soften. They hardened. doubt slipped in. "Victoria," he said quietly, "where were you?" Her lips parted, searching for an answer she hadn't prepared. I was, in the bath," she stammered. "I told you, remember?" "No," Daniel said. "You didn't." The crowd fell silent. Elena felt chills ripple across her skin. Victoria's confident mask wavered for the first time. And then another voice entered the conversation, small, scared, trembling. "Mrs. Patel, the housekeeper." "Sir." "I didn't want to say anything but I heard Ms. Van Allen arguing on the phone last night." Victoria spun around, horrified. "What? You're lying." Mrs. Patel backed away, shaking. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you were yelling. You said, everything needs to happen tonight." "I heard it." The detective exchanged a sharp glance with his partner. Daniel looked sick, betrayed, blindsided, furious. "Victoria," he demanded, "who were you talking to?" She swallowed hard. Too hard. "No one important." The worst possible answer. Elena stepped forward again. "Detective. I think she hired someone. I think she planned this." Victoria screamed, "Stop blaming me," but her voice cracked, the first real sign of fear since last night. Officers approached her. "Ma'am," the detective said firmly, "we're going to need you to come in for questioning." "You can't do this." "I did nothing," she shrieked. But there was no escape now, not from suspicion, not from the community, not from the truth tightening around her throat. As officers led her toward the car, Victoria turned her head and glared at Elena with pure hatred, a silent promise of revenge. But Elena stood tall. Strong. Unshaken. Because for the first time since the kidnapping, someone believed her. The community. The detective. Even Daniel. And beneath the chaos, a fragile, desperate hope sparked to life, a hope that Liam might still be found alive. But Elena didn't know that the real danger was only beginning. Because the kidnapper wasn't working alone. And Victoria's involvement was only the surface of something far darker. The moment Victoria was escorted into the police car, the atmosphere around the mansion shifted from chaotic fear to a thick, suffocating dread. It felt as if the walls themselves had learned a terrible secret and were now struggling to hold it in. Daniel stood silently on the driveway, watching the taillights fade down the street. Part of him felt relief, a pressure releasing from his chest, but another part felt shattered at the possibility that the woman he intended to marry might have had a hand in taking his only child. Elena walked toward him slowly, her steps careful, as if afraid that her presence might crack him further. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice gentle but laced with panic, "this isn't over. I know she's involved, but I think there's more. I think someone else is helping her." Before Daniel could respond, the lead detective approached, holding a tablet with footage recovered from traffic cameras around the neighborhood. "We found something," he said, his tone grim. A van matching the description passed through the east exit of the community about 10 minutes after the kidnapping. He tapped the screen. The pixelated video showed a blurred black van, speeding without headlights. Then he paused the footage and zoomed in on the passenger side. A flash of light, not random, not environmental, but a reflection. "That's Victoria's earring," Elena breathed. Daniel felt the ground tilt beneath him. The detective nodded. "We can't confirm with 100% certainty yet, but it's a solid lead. She may not have been the one driving, but she was in the vehicle." Daniel's face twisted in shock, disbelief, and raw heartbreak. The woman he trusted with his future, willingly sat in the vehicle that took his child. Elena placed a comforting hand on his arm, grounding him before his emotions spiraled. "We will find him," she whispered. "I swear to you." But the detective wasn't finished. He pulled another image onto the screen, a still image from a camera further down the road. It showed the van turning off onto an empty rural highway. That area leads to abandoned barns, old warehouses, and private properties, he explained. We're sending units out, but we need to be realistic. They're moving fast, changing direction constantly. Whoever planned this knows how to avoid detection. Elena felt her stomach tighten. Someone professional? Yes, the detective answered. Someone trained. That single word sent a cold shiver through the group. Meanwhile, back inside the mansion, officers dusted the security panel for prints. Elena paced restlessly in the hallway until an officer called out, "We got something." The detective hurried over as the forensic tech revealed a partial thumbprint. It's smudged, the tech said, but distinct enough to run through databases. Give us an hour. Elena leaned against the wall, exhaling sharply. Every minute felt like an hour, every hour like a lifetime. Daniel paced the room, his fingers digging into his hair, unable to sit, unable to breathe without hearing Liam calling out for him. Why would she do this? He whispered, eyes filled with tears that refused to fall. Elena swallowed hard. Because Liam was the one thing you loved more than her. And she couldn't stand it. Daniel closed his eyes, grief slicing deeper with every breath. I should have seen it. I should have known. Elena shook her head. No. Evil hides behind pretty faces. You weren't supposed to see it. The detective returned with another update. We questioned Victoria at the station. She denies everything. Claims she was asleep. Daniel scoffed. Asleep? While my son was being dragged out of the house? The detective nodded. We don't believe her. But she's careful. She won't admit anything. Elena stepped forward. Did she ask for a lawyer? Yes, he said. Which tells us she's afraid. But something wasn't right. Elena felt it deep in her bones. Victoria might have been involved, but she didn't seem like the type who could orchestrate something this complex alone. Detective, Elena said slowly, what if this wasn't just jealousy? What if there's someone else, someone who benefits from Liam being gone? The detective looked at her curiously. What are you suggesting? Elena hesitated. Victoria never acts alone. She doesn't make decisions by herself. She always follows someone else's lead. Someone she trusts. Who she listens to. Daniel frowned. But who would she trust enough to do something like this? Elena opened her mouth but stopped. A memory flashed, a voice she overheard once late at night. Victoria whispering into her phone, saying two words she never understood until now, he agreed. Elena's blood ran cold. Detective, check her phone records. Already done, he replied. But her phone was wiped. Factory reset. Elena's stomach dropped. Then check the house phone. The landline. The detective's eyes widened. Good idea. They hurried to the study and accessed the landline logs. The screen loaded slowly, and then a number appeared. An unregistered burner phone. Called at 11:17 p.m., exactly 15 minutes before the kidnapping. Elena's heart pounded. Who used the phone? The detective looked at her. The housekeeper said Victoria was in the study before midnight. Daniel clenched his fists. She called the kidnapper. But the detective wasn't satisfied yet. Let's run the number, he ordered. The system processed. And then, a match. Not to a name. But to a location. An abandoned farmhouse 11 miles out of town. Elena felt her breath catch. That's where they're keeping him. Daniel grabbed his coat, ready to sprint out the door. We're going. Now. But the detective grabbed his arm. No, sir. It's dangerous. Let us handle it. That's my son. Daniel roared. I'm not staying behind. Elena stepped between them, her voice steady but trembling. Detective, you need us. Daniel knows Liam better than anyone. And I can talk to him. I can calm him if he's scared. The detective hesitated, and then finally nodded. Fine. But you stay behind us at all times. As units gathered and officers armed themselves, Daniel and Elena got into the lead car. The drive felt endless, the headlights cutting through the night like a blade. Every mile they traveled pulled them closer to the truth, but also closer to danger neither of them could imagine. Elena stared out the window, gripping Liam's bracelet tightly. Hold on, baby, she whispered. We're coming. But deep in her soul, she sensed something the others didn't. This wasn't just a kidnapping. This was a betrayal rooted deeper, darker, and far more personal than anyone suspected. And the real mastermind was waiting for them. The convoy of police vehicles tore down the rural highway, their sirens off but their urgency unmistakable, slicing through the cold night air like a warning the darkness itself couldn't ignore. Elena sat sandwiched between two officers in the back seat, her fingers bruised from how tightly she held Liam's bracelet. Daniel sat in the front beside the detective, his jaw clenched so hard it looked like it might crack. Every mile that passed felt like a countdown, not toward rescue, but toward something much darker. When the GPS finally directed them down a dirt road leading to an abandoned farmhouse, the air shifted. The place was unsettling, surrounded by acres of dead, silent land. One broken barn. One sagging roof. No cars in sight. No movement. Too quiet. This might be a trap, the detective whispered, raising his weapon. Officers spread out, forming a perimeter. Daniel tried to push forward, but two officers held him back. Let us clear it first, one warned. Elena stepped beside him, her breath trembling. He's here, she whispered. I can feel it. The detective signaled, and officers kicked the door open. The inside reeked of mold and dust. Elena's eyes darted everywhere, overturned crates, broken windows, scattered rope on the ground, but no child. No sign of Liam. He was here, the detective murmured, kneeling beside a ripped piece of cloth. Elena recognized it instantly. Liam's green t-shirt. Her chest caved in as she grabbed it, bringing it close to her face as if she might still smell his shampoo. They moved him, she whispered. They took him somewhere else. Daniel fell against the wall, his breathing ragged. Why? Why move him? For what? The detective didn't answer, because at that moment, one of the officers shouted from the back of the barn. Sir! You need to see this. They ran outside, boots kicking up clouds of dust, until they reached a small shed half buried behind tall grass. The wooden door was padlocked, or had been. It hung open now, broken clean through as if kicked violently from the inside. Elena's heart pounded as she stepped forward, ignoring the detective's command to stay back. Inside the shed was a small, dark room. Straw on the floor. A half-empty bottle of water. And a single piece of paper taped to the wall. A ransom note. He doesn't belong to you. Bring $20 million tomorrow. No police. Or you'll never see him again. Daniel swallowed hard, reading the words over and over as if trying to force them into meaning something else. But Elena stepped closer, and saw something no one else did. A handwriting curve. A letter formation she knew too well. Detective, she whispered, her voice hollow. This handwriting. I've seen it. Where? He demanded. Elena turned slowly, her eyes locking on Daniel. On the letters Victoria keeps in her drawer. Daniel stiffened. Love letters? No, Elena said softly. Bank documents. The detective's eyes narrowed. Financial documents? Elena nodded. I cleaned her room. She constantly receives papers from one person. Someone she called the advisor. Someone she said she couldn't afford to upset. The detective radioed a unit immediately. Search Victoria's room. All drawers. All documents. Now. But before he could continue, another officer shouted, "Footprints!" Leading away from the barn. The detective, Daniel, and Elena ran toward the trail. The prints were messy but clear, one large boot print, and a smaller one. Daniel froze. "That's Liam's," he whispered. He walked part of the way. Elena squeezed his arm. "He's still alive. He's being kept alive to force the ransom." The detective examined the spacing. Whoever walked with him was dragging something heavy. Elena blinked. "A box?" "No," the detective said. "A bag. Filled with cash." Daniel's stomach dropped. "They already collected money?" The detective shook his head. "No. They moved him to collect something else." Elena frowned. What else could they want besides money? The detective didn't answer, because at that moment, his radio crackled. "Sir, we searched Victoria's room and found a safe." "Open it," the detective ordered. 5 seconds of static. Then. "Sir, you need to get back here. Now." They raced back to the vehicles as officers began transmitting images through the detective's tablet. The safe door was pried open. Inside were documents, but not the kind they expected. Not financial papers. Birth certificates. Medical records. Photos. Daniel's eyes widened, confused. "These are Liam's hospital documents." Elena leaned in, her voice trembling. "Why would Victoria have those?" Then the detective opened the next image. And Daniel's world shattered. A DNA test. Daniel Hawthorne, not the biological father. He stumbled backward, the ground pulling away beneath him. "No, no, this is a lie, this is..." Elena grabbed his arms, steadying him. "Daniel, listen. Victoria forged things before. She could have forged this too." But the detective pointed at the lower corner. "This lab is legitimate. Not easy to fake." Daniel stared at the screen like it was a weapon. Why would she hide this? Why keep it? Elena's breathing hitched, because suddenly, so much made sense. "Daniel," she whispered. "Victoria didn't just want Liam gone. She wanted to ruin you. Destroy you emotionally. Take everything." The detective spoke quietly. "If Liam isn't biologically yours, legally, you have no claim. If Victoria married you, she could contest guardianship. She could argue that Liam wasn't your responsibility. She could take him away later." Daniel felt the air collapse around him. "But why kidnap him?" Elena's voice broke. "To force you to pay. To break you financially. To weaken you before a custody battle you didn't even know was coming." The detective added, "And she's not the mastermind. Not if these documents were prepared months ago." Elena gasped softly, remembering something. "Detective, the advisor. Victoria always whispered about him. She said he was the real reason she'd win everything." The detective's eyes hardened. "Who is he?" Elena swallowed. She mentioned a name once. "I didn't understand it. Something like..." A voice behind them finished the sentence. "Jonathan Vale." They spun around as an officer approached holding a photo from Victoria's safe. A man in a suit. Cold eyes. A former business partner of Daniel. A man Daniel sued 5 years ago for embezzlement, destroying his empire. The detective exhaled sharply. He has motive. Money, revenge, and connections to criminals. Daniel's fists tightened. "He took my son to punish me." Elena's voice trembled. "And he used Victoria to do it." The detective looked at them both. This isn't just a kidnapping anymore. This is revenge, long-planned and deeply personal. Elena felt her heart pound hard enough to bruise her ribs. So where is Liam now? The detective turned grim. He's with Jonathan Vale. Daniel's face filled with terror and rage. Then we find him. Whatever it takes. But Elena wasn't breathing anymore. Because she suddenly remembered something else. A clue she didn't realize mattered. An address she once overheard Victoria mention when she thought no one was listening. Not a farmhouse. Not a warehouse. A place far more dangerous. She turned toward the detective, her voice shaking violently. I know where Liam is. And when she said the words, every officer froze. Because Elena wasn't guessing. She was absolutely certain. Elena's voice trembled as she spoke the address, but her certainty was terrifyingly sharp. The old shipping yard on Harbor Route 19, she whispered, her fingers digging into Liam's bracelet. I heard Victoria mention it once, arguing with someone on the phone. She said, not the farmhouse, the yard. He'll be safer there. The detective froze, eyes widening. The shipping yard? That place was shut down years ago. It's private property now, owned by Jonathan Vale's shell company. Daniel's breath stopped in his throat, his pulse roaring like fire. Then that's where he is, he said, his voice low, dangerous. That's where they're keeping my son. Within minutes, every officer sprinted to their vehicles, urgency turning into full-fledged adrenaline. The convoy sped toward the harbor, engines roaring beneath the dark sky as if the night itself were being torn open. Elena sat forward in her seat, gripping the headrest, whispering desperate prayers under her breath. Daniel stared out the windshield with a look so fierce and broken that even the detective beside him felt its weight. They picked the yard for a reason, the detective said. No cameras. Empty containers. Multiple hiding spots. If Vale wants a negotiation, or a confrontation, he'll do it there. Daniel clenched his fists. He won't walk away from this. As the convoy neared the harbor, the world around them transformed into a graveyard of rusted metal, towers of shipping containers stacked like silent giants, abandoned cranes frozen mid-air, and a cold wind carrying the scent of ocean salt and gasoline. The headlights washed over cracked pavement and graffiti-marked barrels, but there was something else, a faint light flickering inside a container at the far end of the lot. There, Elena whispered. He's in there. Officers spread out, surrounding the area, moving with tactical silence. Daniel tried to advance, but the detective held him back. We go first. When we secure the boy, you move in. But Daniel wasn't listening. His entire body was vibrating with fear and love and rage. Elena grabbed his hand, grounding him. Liam needs you calm, she whispered. He needs you alive. The detective signaled. Officers inched toward the lit container, weapons drawn, flashlights cutting through the gloom. One officer reached the door and gently tried the handle. Locked. Dead silence. Then, a voice from inside. A man's voice. Smooth. Cold. Confident. I knew you'd come, Daniel. Daniel's blood froze. Jonathan Vale. The man who once shook Daniel's hand in partnership, then stabbed him in the back financially, and now wanted to destroy him completely. The detective shouted, Vale. Step out with your hands up. The container door slowly creaked open. Vale stepped into the doorway wearing a tailored coat, his hair slicked back, a smirk carved into his face. But next to him, Liam. Tied loosely, sitting on a crate, unharmed but terrified. His eyes filled with tears when he saw the officers. Daddy, he whispered. Daniel lunged forward, but 3 officers held him back. Vale raised a gun lazily, pointing it at the child. Daniel's scream tore through the lot. Don't touch him. Vale chuckled. Relax. If I wanted him dead, he wouldn't still be breathing. Elena's stomach twisted. The man wasn't bluffing, he was playing. Playing with their fear. Playing with a father's breaking heart. Vale stepped further out, exposing himself but keeping his gun angled just enough for leverage. Let's keep this simple, Vale said. You destroyed my empire. You ruined me. Tonight. I return the favor. Daniel shouted, take me. Not him. Vale laughed. Oh, Daniel. I don't want to take anyone. I want you to lose everything. Starting with the only person you truly love. Elena stepped forward before the officers could stop her. Her voice was steady, sharp as glass. He's just a child. You don't care about him. This is about money, and revenge. Vale smirked. Correct. I don't care about him. But he matters to you. Elena felt her pulse thunder. Her instincts whispered something she couldn't ignore. She stepped even closer. Vale, you're making a mistake. He tilted his head mockingly. Enlighten me. Victoria doesn't love you, Elena said softly. Vale's face twitched. Just slightly. Enough to confirm it. She used you, Elena continued. She manipulated you. She played on your bitterness. She needed someone stupid enough to do the dirty work. Shut up, Vale hissed. Elena went on anyway. Victoria planned to betray you after the ransom. She was going to take the money for herself. You were just a pawn. Vale's hand shook, not much, but enough that the officers noticed. Daniel caught on instantly. She lied to you, he said, his voice cutting through the tension. She lied to everyone. She even forged documents. She wanted both of us destroyed. She wanted control. The detective added, she's already in custody. And she's naming names. That was the blow that cracked Vale's confidence into dust. His jaw tightened. His eyes darted. His breathing faltered. He wasn't afraid of police, but he was afraid of betrayal. Hurt pride. A broken loyalty. And Victoria had delivered exactly that. Elena whispered, look at Liam. Does hurting him get you your life back? Does killing an 8-year-old make you a winner? Or does it prove she played you like a fool? Vale lowered the gun, 1 inch. 1 inch was all the officers needed. Now, the detective shouted. Officers swarmed forward. Vale fired, once, but the bullet lodged into a container wall as his hand was slammed to the ground. Daniel broke free and sprinted past the officers, falling to his knees in front of Liam. The boy collapsed into his arms, sobbing into his father's chest. Daddy. Daddy, Daniel held him so tightly it hurt. He buried his face in his son's hair, tears finally falling freely. I've got you, he whispered. I've got you, buddy. You're safe now. Elena rushed forward, tears streaming down her face as she knelt beside them. Liam reached out, squeezing her hand with all the strength he had left. You came, he cried. You found me. Elena kissed his forehead. Always. Officers dragged Vale out in cuffs, his arrogance finally broken. The detective walked over. Daniel, he's safe. It's over. Daniel looked at Elena with a depth of gratitude words could never capture. No, he whispered, pulling his son tighter. It's not over. He looked at Elena, truly looked, and his voice softened. It's the beginning. The night was still cold. The yard still dark. But the moment Daniel lifted Liam into his arms and Elena wrapped them both in the blanket an officer handed her, the world felt warm again. Safe again. Whole again. And as the sun began to rise on the harbor, painting the sky with gold, justice wasn't just served. It was reclaimed. If this story shook you, if it made your heart race, your eyes tear up, or your soul burn for justice, then don't leave without supporting this channel. Hit that subscribe button, because I bring you real, emotional, twist-filled stories like this every single week. And before you go, tell me in the comments, speech balloon, which part of this story hit you the hardest? Your comment helps this channel grow and reach more incredible viewers like you. Thank you for watching, stay safe, stay strong, and I'll see you in the next story.